Hi, everybody. This is Mike with Tronster Teaches and obviously Michael Tron, Facebook. Um, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is going to be a video about, I guess, my journey to the point now in my life where I hear God. Um, maybe I don't know if that's the best explanation of what this video is going to be. But I'm going to tell you guys the truth. Um, I, I'm not going to tell you some of the things that were said to me. Those are personal. But I will tell you the instances in which it happened, the circumstances that caused it to happen, uh, what I did, what I was doing at that time. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's already a minute long, but it could be like 20 minutes long. Not exactly sure. But we're going to start here. Typically, I say Acts 17:11 as search the scriptures to see if these things be true. But this is like just my story. So Matthew 10:14 would apply. I'm gonna put this out there, and you either receive it or you don't. Don't bother me. Pretty sure I'm gonna get some hate on this because people aren't gonna agree with me. They're gonna say, "Oh, God doesn't work that way." Well, He does. I mean, it is happening to me. I'm not lying. I'm not faking anything. I'm not coming up with stupid stories. I'm literally just telling you the facts that physically actually occurred. So, whether you accept it or not, I don't care. And for those of you that are easily offended at things of God because, it doesn't follow what I think Torah is. Go on, just get on out of here. Don't let the door hit you. Boy, I am becoming a Texan real quick. I never had a Texas accent, by the way. If you listen to my voice, you probably can't tell where I'm from. I'm from Alaska. I was born in California and then moved to Alaska when I was a very small child, and I lived most of my life in Alaska until I was 15. And Alaska was great. Made a man out of me. But that's not really where everything starts. It all starts in California, of all places. I went to visit California for a while and then ended up staying there and living there for a while. And that's just after I was 15 until I was 19 years old. I lived back in California. And then I moved back to Alaska, and then I moved to North Dakota, and then when I was about 23 or 24 years old, I moved back to California into an area of California known as the South Lake Tahoe Forest, El Dorado National Forest. And I lived there for a while, and then everything changed. Mother of my children and I split, and that's really the beginning of the story. That's really the beginning of the story. Very heartbreaking episode. It crushed me a lot. I'm not gonna explain how it ended. It just didn't end well. And so it didn't end well. But that's really where I was at my lowest, and God stepped in. And it not in the same way in which He steps in now in my life, but in a different way, a good way nonetheless. And it changed my perspective that I saw of God. I started seeing things in Scripture that I didn't understand. That I did understand, but at the same time, there was an aspect to them that I didn't understand. And so I started seeking in the Scriptures. And that pretty much drove a wedge between me and many people in my life. Because up until that point, I may have been a Christian, but I was not walking the way that I should have walked. Now, mind you, my entire journey with God starts with a dream that I had So I don't know if it was a dream or something. When I was 3 years old, and I specifically remember this, and my mom remembered it, and my dad remembered it, and they both told me about it. But when I was 3 years old, I was sitting cross-legged, cross-legged Indian style, and I was sitting on my bed. I don't remember a lot, but I remember thinking in that moment, God, what is God? Who is God? What came before God? I was sitting there. All of a sudden, I'm not sitting there. I was in this deep blue expanse, just like everywhere around me. And there were two men in front of me. One massive, huge, very bright and brilliant man sitting cross-legged like I was. So that caught my attention because I'm sitting cross-legged, and as a little kid, someone else is sitting cross-legged. Hey, we can be friends. We're sitting the same way. And next to him is a smaller man, still a man, but not smaller as in scale of features like a dwarf or something like that, but one man was massive, just huge, towering, 20, 30 stories tall. Now that I think back to this, and the other man was a normal man's size. He was wearing a robe and was sitting in the cross-legged position, and both of them were just smiling at me, but the bigger man was so bright that I don't know, I couldn't make out features or anything like that. I wouldn't be able to describe him, but I could describe the man, the smaller man, the normal-sized man. And he had like a dark beard, with some, I guess, I don't know if it was gray hair or if it was a hair covering, but he had like some sort of covering over him, like his robe and all that was over the top of his head. And I don't know if it was like gray hair or whatever, but he was sitting in a cross-legged position and just smiling at me. Same with the big man, was just smiling at me. And I remember thinking, and as I started to like verbalize that, who are you? In my mind, I didn't say it out loud because I didn't get a chance, because instantly I'm sitting back on my bed, and I didn't know what to make of that, but it stuck with me. It stayed in memory for a long time. And then there's another instance where Doug Bilyeu, the father to my sister, was with my mom, and she was pregnant with my sister, and he used to like to go and beat on my mom while she was pregnant, and it sounded like he was trying to kill that baby, I'll be honest. And he would beat on my mom, and I remember I kept not being able to handle it because I couldn't get in there, because he would go in and lock the door in the bedroom, and you would just hear screaming. It's like just bloody murder. And my mom was a big lady. My mom was like 6'3", 6'2", 6'3". She was a big lady. She had a size 16 shoe, and she was getting beat on by this very small man. He was small, now that I think back to it, because he wasn't much taller than a 5-year-old me. He obviously was. He was adult size, but no, I would say that he was probably in the 5-foot range, maybe 4'10". He is a small man. But he would beat the absolute crap out of my mom, and I'd hear her screaming in there. And one day, before he got home from work, I heard him pulling up, and I went and I stood in front of my mom's door with a wiffle bat, a little plastic wiffle bat. And when he came around the corner from coming in the front door, he went to go, because his typical practice was as soon as he got off work, he would go into her room where he would make her wait. He would tell her to be waiting there when he get there, and he'd go beat the ever-loving crap out of her. And so I stood in that doorway, and I said, "You're not going to hit my mom again." And he picked me up and threw me down the hallway, and it was like a T hallway where the kitchen is over here, the living room is over here, and it's a hallway that jets off. So you have to go from the front door across the kitchen and into the living room, and there's a hallway that jets off to the right. And at the end of that hallway is 2 bedrooms. There are 2 bedrooms. And it might have been 3 bedrooms, I'm not sure. But I remember my room and my mom's room. and that's it. I think it was just a 2-bedroom, honestly. And he threw me down the hallway and from my mom's room, and I hit the wall at the end of the hallway where it comes out into the like dining area. And all I remember is, I'm gonna be honest, all I remember is him grabbing me. I don't remember anything until I was like waking up, and when I woke up, there was the drywall right here behind me. I was slumped down on the ground, and the drywall was like right here behind me, and it was all cracked in. I was 5 years old, but apparently it knocked me unconscious. It probably hit like a stud or something. I don't know. But when I was unconscious, God like spoke to me. I don't know how else to describe it. He just spoke. And still, I don't really remember what he said. And again, there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to tell you that he said, but this is an instance where I don't remember a lot of what he said, but I do remember some of it, and I have written it down in the past. But I don't remember all of it. Obviously, it's so long ago. I mean, I'm surprised I even remember those 2 incidents. But so all that goes on. I'm 5, and then time passes, and then my mom dies, and I go live with my aunt, and you all know the story of my aunt. Very terrible 5 years of my life. Very terrible 5 years of my life. My sister likes to deny and downplay some of the things that happened because her, my aunt, and Lee all had this loving relationship, whereas I was the guy that my aunt and Lee would just beat the shit out of. So, yeah, very terrible 5 years of my life. But then I go to California and all of these things, and I go through living in North Dakota and Alaska, and then after North Dakota, coming back to California, and it was at that time that the mother of my children and I split, and I went to the mountains in the El Dorado Hills area of California, and I had lost everything. So when the mother of my children and I split, like everything went down the tube. Lost a place to live, my vehicles, I lost those. Lost all my tools for work. I lost everything. And so I had to go stay with my family, who had property up in the Tahoe Forest area, in a place known as Grizzly Flats, California. And while I was in Grizzly Flats, a lot of crazy stuff happened, but it didn't happen all at once. About 2016 is when I first had to start staying up there in the mountains, which turned out to be a big blessing, even though I for sure did not want to be, as an adult, staying with my family. That was garbage. But it was a big blessing because I had a 4-wheeler, and most of the time I really didn't stay at that house. I rented a room from somebody in the same like neighborhood area. And I just did small jobs and things like that to pay for the rent for where I was staying. Then one day, my dad and I are standing in front of my grandpa's house. We're standing there in front of the house, and I'm talking to him. It's in the road. It's middle of the forest. It's dark out. It's about 7:30 at night, and it was in September, so it was starting to get dark. It was starting to get dark early. Starting to get dark a lot earlier. Now this is obviously 2016. I started moving up there. A couple years passed of me staying up there and working and stuff like that. And then 2018 is when this stuff with my dad happens. And we're standing in the road. And mind you, I've been very diligent up until this point. After the split of the mother of my children and I really started heavily reading the Bible a lot. That's when I actually started the Koinonia House doctoral outline program. Basically, go through all the commentaries by Ron Mattson and Chuck Missler, and you just they give you tests on it, and you have to write things and all that stuff. So I really started it about 2017, and so I had been very diligent for about a year and a half of just deep study of God's Word, seeking Him, just really truly seeking Him. I had nothing else to give. I would give the heart out of my chest and put it at His feet if I could. Obviously I can't because I would probably die. But that's what I feel when I would kneel and pray. I just, if I could, I would take the heart out of my chest and lay it at your feet, Yeshua. And so I diligently prayed a lot and asked God for things and many other things that I won't elaborate on here. But then my dad and I are standing after being diligent for a while, like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. We're standing in front of the house. It's dark out. There's stars in the sky. It's clear skies. And my dad looks up and I look up at the same time, and there was a star moving. And I mean, that's not unusual. But then there was another one, and it was like bluish. And then there was another one. And I'm like looking around, and my dad is also looking around as we're having this conversation, and he's noticing that all these stars are starting to move. And like you're looking in between the trees, and you're like, what is going on here? And then all of a sudden, this voice that I maybe had heard before, maybe not, I don't know. Just this powerful, come to me, my son. And I looked at my dad, and he looked right back at me. And he's like, I guess you better go. Like he heard it too. I don't know if he actually heard it or not, or maybe God gave him a feeling, or maybe he did hear it, who knows. So I hopped in. I owned a Prius at the time. Mind you, I lived in California. I owned a Prius. I hopped in my Prius and started just driving. Knowing that God was calling me. Just knowing it. And having no other thought in my mind than going to where he's telling me to come to. And I drove in these corners and that corners, and the Spirit just is like a compass that leads you. I'm going to do my best to not go into physics because I really want to analyze why the Spirit is just like a compass based on the magnetic fields of the earth. But I'm not going to do that. But I would like to expound on that someday. But like a compass, he just led me and I drove. And it was almost like it was autopilot because I was just praising and worshiping the whole drive. Like, why me? Why? I don't understand, God. It doesn't make any sense why you would be even talking to me. Why you would want to have a conversation with me. Why? It's just why. I'm nothing. I'm miserable. And I don't deserve for you to speak to me at all. So why are you even speaking to me? And it just on autopilot, wondering why. And I'm saying, praise you, thank you for this. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't get why me. And so I drove, and then all of a sudden, pull over here. And so I did. I pulled over. And I got out of the car, and it was a road, and then off to the, past that road, there was like a pull out that we pull, I'm driving with God. It's funny. That's so funny, I said we. But there's a pull off, and I pull off, and I get out, and across the road that I pulled off from is a giant cliff. A massive, not like a massive cliff, but it's like we're on the top of a mountain at about like 5,000 feet elevation, or like 4,000 feet elevation. And for anybody that's interested, I can show you the exact spot on Google Maps, right where it all happened, because a few other things happened in that exact same location. But I get out, and I don't know, I'm looking up at the stars, and the stars are all still moving, and it was like all of the stars in the sky were moving all to a singular point in the sky. And I couldn't explain it, but my dad saw it too. He watched it happen. And hold on. My dad saw it too. And so I'm like out of the Prius, and I'm standing in front of it, and mind you, I had light bars on the front of my Prius, okay? And I turned them off, but I'm like leaning on the light bar on the front of my Prius, and I'm looking up at the stars, and in front of me which would be out the driver's side of the car when I pulled off, leaning on the light bar, pointing that way. In front of me is a big open cliff, and there's a moon in the sky in front of me. Orion is a constellation that I could see, and then a very bright reddish yellow star off to the left of the Orion constellation. That's here in my. I'm like reliving this through this, so I'm not actually saying it's out over here where I'm pointing, but just reliving the instance in my mind. And I'm looking out at the stars, and I see like the faintness of a bird in the light. And I really didn't think much of it at first, but I remember seeing the faintness of a bird, a white bird, and it's like reflecting in the moonlight. And I can't remember if it was a full moon or like a half moon or a sliver of a moon. I'm not sure. I don't remember that. That wasn't something I was focusing on. But I remember, and then the sound of the bird, as I'm not paying attention to it anymore, and I'm looking back up at the stars, and remind you, there's a bunch of stars moving up to a singular point, but Orion and this other star that are there, they're stationary. They're like they normally are, and there are stars moving past them. And I don't know what they were that I was seeing, so I can't rightly say what it was, but the constellation and the star were staying in place, and this bird is flying off to my right, and it's coming up towards the road, and it's a friggin' seagull. There's a friggin' seagull in the mountains, 200 miles from the beach in California. It didn't make any sense to me, and that caught my attention for sure. I heard the seagull caw, and it kept cawing as it was flying up towards the road, and all of a sudden that caw started changing into like a voice. Kneel. And it would like caw, kneel, and then I felt a hand on this shoulder or something. I don't know if it's a hand or something pushed me down, and I fell directly into the dirt on my knees. And I remember God spoke, and just spoke for like 20 minutes, and I just there in a kneeling position looking up at all the stars and hearing the words that are being said to me. And I didn't have much that I could do except tears streamed down my face for the things that were said and promised to me. And I'm not going to share the things that were said, mind you. That's for me. You guys will find out when it's time for you to find out, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you. God wants to tell you, you can. I'm not going to tell you what he said to me, because that's between me and him. I'm not a prophet. I'm not here to tell you that God says this is going to happen or God says that is going to happen. I'm just going to focus on the mission that God has set for me, and that's what I'm here for. My mission is not to be a prophet. My mission is just to tell you what it is. And to be, you guys know. I don't need to reiterate that here. But this whole experience occurs, and then whatever was on my shoulder, and it was like it could have been a hand or an arm or just energy. I don't know what it was. I think it was a hand. I assume it was a hand, because it like wrapped over, and I felt pressure here, and here, and then nothing down my back. But it held me in place, and for those whole 20 minutes on my knees, I was held there in place. And I got up, and I remember feeling my knees and like the indentations and cuts on my knees from the gravel that was in this like pull-out path, but I didn't care in the moment. I remember feeling the pain as I touched the ground, but then I just didn't think about it again. And it wasn't until I got up that I felt how my knees were, and they hurt. Especially my right knee, because like a rock dug right into the kneecap when I fell down. And then it was over. I mean, mind you, most intense thing that had happened to me ever up until that point. And then it was just over. And I had tears streaming down my face. It was just so amazing. So I go back to the house, and um, the next day, uh, again I hear, "Come to me, my son." And so I hopped on my four-wheeler this time, and I don't know why I knew to hop on my four-wheeler instead of getting in the car, but we didn't go to the same location. We went to a place called Voss Mountain in California, and I just went and did everything that I was said to do, um, exactly as God told me to do, and went there, and more just super immense, crazy, amazing things. And um, then one night I went to another location, and this is, again, this isn't God speaking to me. This is just a moment when whatever happened. But I didn't know at the time that there was a shooting star event that was supposed to occur that night. And so I went to this place that I rode my four-wheeler to all the time, but this time I drove my car out there. And it's like this another cliff spot that's way in the backwoods, very far away from any roads. And already where we were was not anywhere near any stores. I mean, it was 45 minutes from a store. So we were kind of in the woods. And there's already nobody around. And then I go deeper into the woods to this little trail that goes up and then down, and it comes to this plateau. And on this plateau, I would park my four-wheeler or park the car, and I have actually pictures of it. There's one of my reels that I made on Facebook, Michael Trone on Facebook, shows this mountain, this exact spot that I'm talking about, and a few other specific spots that are involved with this crazy last few years. So I'm on this. I go to this spot all the time, and one time I go there, and I'm walking the trails around where I parked the vehicle, and I got lost because it's all on the side of a face, and I didn't know the area, and I got lost, and I was walking, and I'm very, very, very hot. It's super hot in California at this time. End of August, beginning of September, mid-September, late September even, it can be very hot. It could be 80, 85, 90 degrees. And it had been clear all day. There's no clouds in the sky or anything. And I'm out walking around, and I end up getting lost, and I can't quite find my way back to my car where I was, because it was a new location. And of course, I know tracking skills and all that type of stuff, but in the moment, I ended up just fine. I wasn't that lost. But I remember it was just so hot, and I had a jacket on, but I wasn't going to get rid of the jacket, because if I stayed lost all night, I'd need the jacket overnight. And so I was walking, and I looked up at the stars. It was nighttime now again, and I looked up at the stars, and I was just so hot, and I was exhausted, and I'd been walking up and down these hills over and over, back and forth through all these trails over and over for so long. And I remember just looking at the stars and just falling to my knees, and as I'm falling, I just need rain, Father. I just need rain. And my knees hit the ground, and my head went down at the same time my knees hit the ground, and all of a sudden, it starts pouring rain on me. And that was a mind-blowing moment. I didn't know if I had done it, or if I didn't know what was going on. But I looked up, and it's pouring rain, and there's no stars in the sky, and I'm completely covered with clouds. And the rain continued for about 25, 30 minutes as I just walked in the rain and enjoyed the cool water, because it was so hot. And it was about a 20, 30 minute walk of just walking up and down these trails, and following the urge to go this trail or that trail that I was feeling. And 30 minutes later, I was back at the car. And it stopped raining as soon as I walked up to the car. Literally, as I walked up and put my hand on the handle, the rain stopped. And that was awesome. That was tremendously awesome. So, but then at that same location where I parked my car and the rain incident happened, at that exact same location, months later, I think, there was a meteor shower that I had just spoken of. And I didn't know that this meteor shower was coming, but there was supposed to be a meteor shower. And I went and I just sat there. I laid there on that plateau and laid on my back, and it was starting to get cold at this time of year. It was October now, I think it was, finally. Maybe beginning of October, into September. I'm not. It would take me a minute to just perfectly remember when it was, but and I laid on my back and I watched these shooting stars happening, and I remember just praying and worshiping God the whole time that I was watching just this amazingly brilliant show. There was no lights. I could see every shooting star, and you could almost hear them. I don't know if that's something like a figment of your imagination, but you can almost hear them as they stream across. They give off some sort of frequency, and so you can almost hear them. And I remember just being so awestruck at the magnificence of God's creation, and thinking about all the moments that I had had where God had spoken to me, and just in every instance, how unworthy I am, how unrighteous I am. I'm not a good person. I'm an asshole. Why God? Why God? Why God? And I remember leaving from that incident with the shooting stars. I remember leaving from that incident thinking, okay, I'm going to come back here tomorrow on my four-wheeler during the daytime. And so I did. I came back on my four-wheeler. I got off the four-wheeler in that exact same spot. And there's this rock. It's a big plateau, and then there's a huge hill that goes down to a ravine. Again, photos of this place on my reels. I took photos of it, and I put it into a short little music reel showcasing the beauty of this mountain. It's amazingly beautiful, mind you. But there was this little rock that protruded from the dirt about this far out of the dirt, and it was basically a part of the bedrock whole area that this plateau was made on. It was literally the rock of the mountain. And I would lay my forehead against it. I would get down on my knees and I would lay my forehead against it, and it was right at the edge of this plateau that went down this really steep hill to a cliff, and then from the cliff down to a river at the bottom, a river basin at the bottom. And the most beautiful place in the world, in my opinion. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in the world. And I would stick my forehead on the rock, and my back would be to the forest that I drove through to get up to this plateau. And when I stick my head to the rock, my forehead to the rock, and I sit there and I praise and I worship, and then I go to stand up, and my head is against the rock, and I go to stand up, and my body can move, but it was almost as if my skull and the surface of that rock were like welded together. I don't know how else to explain it. My head was not moving, but the rest of my body tried to stand up, and I couldn't. And it wasn't like there was a weight on it, and it wasn't like it was pulling my skin or like it was glued or anything like that. It was just stuck. It was a part of that rock, my forehead. And I couldn't stand up. And so I started to praise and worship. And while I was doing so, I wasn't speaking English. I mean, I was like praising and worshiping out loud, but it wasn't coming out in English. I was hearing it in my head in English, but it wasn't coming out in English. It was like, I would say that it's like Aramaic and Hebrew and a little bit of Sumerian and a little bit of Greek. It was like all of those languages mixed together. I don't know, that's my best way to describe it. And the linguist in me, I love languages. I learned Russian first, and so I love languages. Each language is a puzzle, and So the linguist in me, when I'm saying these, I started saying statements that I knew, that I could remember in English in my head, and they were coming out in this other language. And I went and I said my name, Michael, right? But it didn't come out Michael. It came out Hatepua. And I what? That's not my name. And so I said my name again, and again, Hatepua. Hatepua. I didn't get what was going on, and so I started saying other stuff, and lots of other stuff just went by the wayside. I forgot what was said. But Hatepua, that stuck with me. And for like about, I don't know how long. I'll be honest, I don't know how long it was. I was there a while, stuck to that rock, and then eventually I wasn't stuck to the rock anymore. During the time when I was praising and worshiping in this other language, all of a sudden my head released from the rock, and I started walking around and talking and praising and worshiping, but still in this other language. And I couldn't get English words to come out. I tried. I couldn't get any English words to come out at all. I really tried. I said my name. I said, like, Yeshua. I tried to say words that we knew in English, and I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure Yeshua came out as Yeshua. Or I said Jesus, actually. This was a time before I was saying Yeshua, so I must have said Jesus. And it was not Jesus that came out. And I don't remember what came out. I don't remember a lot of stuff from like what was said or what I said. But to that Hatepua, that's stuck. Still to this day, I remember it coming out of my mouth and blowing my mind. I'm like, this is not English. I am speaking English. And I remember saying that out loud, and it came out in a bunch of just words I didn't understand. And I was getting frustrated. I didn't understand. I could not get myself to speak English. And then all of a sudden, I'm speaking English again. And the words coming out of my mouth are English again. And I just, so I went home and I looked up Hatepua, and Ha is Hebrew, it means like the, but Pua is apple, but Tapua is Aramaic for apple. So it was Hebrew, Ha, and Tapua, which is apple, but it's Aramaic apple, which is the apple of God's eye. So the combination of those two words is the apple of God's eyes. But I was trying to say my name, Michael. I know it's a Hebrew word, so if I was speaking Hebrew, it would have came out as Hebrew, but it wasn't like Hebrew. It was like a conglomerate of multiple languages. And since that point, there's been multiple times that I've spoken in this language when praying. Sometimes I understand what I'm saying, because I hear it in English, try to say it in English, and it comes out in this language. And the linguist in me has, over the times that this has happened, tried to translate for myself from what I know of Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew and Sumerian, or cuneiform for those of you that aren't familiar with Hittite dialects. So I've tried to do the best I can to like interpret and translate, but now it's getting to a point whenever I'm speaking in that language when I'm praying that I'll hear it in English, I'll understand that it's supposed to come out in English, and it'll come out in this language, and I'll make mental note of it, and I've gotten better at understanding more so what I'm saying. Because it says in the Bible, you're not supposed to speak tongues in front of people unless there's somebody there to interpret. Because what good is it if you speak tongues at somebody and they just think you're speaking gibberish? I don't know if it's tongues or not. I don't know. This is all new shit to me, bro. This ain't. It's since 2018, 2022. We're 6 years of this craziness. 6 years of this craziness. So, and there have been multiple other times that God has spoken to me. At this point in my life now, just over the last 3 weeks, He's spoken to me almost every day. Only over the last 3 weeks, though. Before that, it was silence for 2 years. 2 years. And I thought I was being diligent and teaching the Bible and studying the Bible and doing everything that I was supposed to do, and He was quiet. And now all of a sudden, the floodgates have opened. And He's saying stuff to me and telling me to tell people things, other people things that He says. Multiple other people now. There's 5 people now that I've been told to tell them something. And one of those is just of the craziest importance, just insane importance that the message get through. And just so much in just the last 3 weeks. I'm very blessed. I'm very thankful. I still don't understand why. I'm a douchebag. I don't understand why He speaks to me. I don't get it. I can't give you some secret as to how you can hear the voice of God, because I don't know what I did to enable this ability, or if it's an ability, or for Him to make, I don't know, for Him to even want to. It's so confusing. I've never been more confused in my life. God isn't the author of confusion, though. And so I will explain this. I've had people tell me, oh, well, if you're confused about it, obviously it's not of God. That's a pretty dumb statement. How many times do you think that Abraham, when he was told to go and offer Isaac, wasn't a little confused? Teensy bit. He listened diligently, but he for sure was probably confused. He confused himself, why? This doesn't make any sense. You've said these things to me, Lord, that my son's bloodline will go on to spread and become father of multitudes. Even happily naming him Abraham for that. And then asked him to go and offer Isaac. And yes, I guarantee you that there was confusion, but there was obedience despite the confusion. So if you think that God's going to do something in your life and you're just going to plainly understand why that's happening and not have any level of confusion, you're a dumbass. For people to say that this isn't of God because I'm confused about it, you're an absolute retard, and I don't care. Begone. It doesn't matter. The things are happening that are happening. Whether you like it or not, this is occurring. This is something that God wants to do in my life. And so y'all can shove it, because I'm going to lean into it. And I'm going to do what God tells me to do without hesitation. Without any hesitation. And if you don't like it, shove it right up where the sun don't shine. Because I'm not a perfect Christian, and I'm not here to portray that I'm a perfect Christian. But God is speaking to me, and y'all are jealous or angry or trying to dismiss it because it's not happening to you. And that's not my fault. Maybe you need to figure out why someone else hearing the word of God given to them to give messages to other people, you should think within yourself why that makes you upset. Because if it makes you upset, then you are Joseph's brothers. You are Joseph's brothers. When Joseph told his brothers of the promises that God had given him, his brothers tried to kill him. And if you can't be happy for somebody who is just diligently searching God, just diligently seeking Him, that's all I want. I just want to give Him my heart. I want to give Him everything. I don't have anything else I can give. I want to give Him just everything. And there's nothing, no material possession, nothing about me that is anything. So the only thing I have to give him is my obedience and my heart. And if you don't like that, shove it right up. Shove it right up where they're done. Shun don't shine. Because it's the truth of the matter. But yeah, that's some of my story, my journey that's led me to this point right now where I'm actually like hearing the voice of God, praying and getting answers to my prayers in an answer. God tells me things. You know how mind-blowing that is? It's so mind-blowing. And it's amazing. And I'm going to lean into it. And if you don't like it, I don't care. Praise Yeshua. I hope this helps you. Whoever it was supposed to help. If it was supposed to help somebody. And if you don't like it, I'm going to dust my shoes off. I'm going to move on to the next town. Because obviously, message wasn't for you. But for those of you that are blessed, I hope you get similar experiences. I hope God speaks to you like he's spoken to me in the past. Because it will change your life. It will change everything about your life. And there is nothing that can make you forget that. Ever. So praise Yeshua. Thank you all.